Hey everyone, hope we're doing well. On to day 2 of Unit 7. So here is the agenda for today. So we're going to talk about how you develop cognitively through childhood, which is going to be, we're getting into our first big name here, Piaget. And then, so take notes on the lecture. And then I'm just going to briefly kind of introduce him. And then you can use any of these 3 links to go take notes on Piaget and his stages. And then you're going to have an assignment pretty similar to what you did yesterday that I'll explain to you. And then focus notes, that'll be checked next Tuesday. And then if you start working on that Unit 1 through 3 vocab packet, awesome. If not, that's due next week, Friday. And probably tomorrow I'll talk a little bit more about that and what the purpose behind that is. So we'll go ahead, get into it for the day. So we talked about the 4 parenting styles yesterday. Some of you need to watch the video, which I probably shouldn't say that in here because it means you're watching the video, especially when I'm explaining the assignments, because some of you didn't do the parenting styles, you did the attachment styles. But here I just wanted to talk authoritarian versus authoritative. Those are the ones that students often get confused with one another because they're very similar. The way I remember the difference is authoritative parents talked and gave reasons why they had certain rules, and then also like tried to give the child some say in the rules as well. So with authoritative, it ends in tive, right? Because there's kind of give and take. They give reasons for the rules. They give the child some responsibility in making the rules. So authoritative, the parents are giving reasons and giving some ownership to the child. And then authoritarian is more like red, my way or the highway, kind of like that dictatorship style of parenting. Permissive versus uninvolved. The biggest thing here is uninvolved is just they're like not there at all, or they're emotionally distant. Permissive, they still have a relationship with the child. The relationship is just more like a friendship. So a lot of you use the Regina George example. You know, the mom is just trying to be a best friend, doesn't really have any rules in place because she wants to be the cool mom. So permissive, they're still involved, they're still there, they have a relationship. There's just no rules in place. Uninvolved is just parents aren't there. So as I said, we're going to talk about Piaget and look at how we develop cognitively through childhood. And remember cognitive psychology. So Piaget would be a developmental psychologist who focuses on cognitive psychology. Cognitive are mental processes. So we talked about how we think, how we solve problems, memory, intelligence, all that stuff. So one thing here, so yesterday we talked about a big theme in developmental psychology is nature or nurture. So does it come from biological or does it come from your environment? And then another big theme is, do we develop in continuity or stages? So continuity is just, is it kind of like this gradual development over time? You can think more like your height would be a good example of continuity, right? It was gradually over time. And then this idea of stages, or is it kind of this abrupt, like we change, level off, and then change again, which you're going to see here. Piaget, he's going to be a stage theorist. Kohlberg is going to be a stage theorist, as well as Erickson. And this here will be what you take notes on, whether it's with the website, the video, or the online textbook I gave you. So Piaget here, he's going to do most of his work in the early 1900s, mid 1900s, and he's going to question how children develop cognitive abilities. And remember, when we're talking about cognitive abilities, thinking, remembering, communicating. So he actually started his career as a psychologist. He was giving children intelligence tests. And he was given children intelligence tests from about the age 5 to 12. which is actually going to be where he ends up focusing his stage theory. And what he noticed was when he would give these intelligence tests, kids that were at the same age typically made the same mistakes. And then, so the kid at 5 made the same mistake as most of the other 5-year-olds, or had some sort of lack of cognitive ability that all other 5-year-olds had, while 12-year-olds made different mistakes. Now, this was unique because at this time when he was given the intelligence test, most psychologists believe that the mind of a child was exactly the same and could do the same things as an adult. It was just slower. So it was like a less powerful version of an adult mind. However, which Piaget is going to find out here and incorporate into his stages, is that's not true. So he's going to propose that we go through 4 stages of development, and he's going to propose that you're cognitively done developing by the time you get to about the age of 13, which is one of the big criticisms of his theory, is that it ends too young, that you're still cognitively developing through early adulthood. But he's going to say that at each stage, you have unique cognitive abilities present and you lack certain cognitive abilities. And that'll be a big part of what you should take notes on, is what cognitive abilities are present at each stage and which ones are not present. So before you get into looking at the different stage theories, one thing he also proposed here was this idea of schemas and how this helps us develop our mental capabilities and our memory. And this kind of goes back, if you remember, we talked about concepts and categories when we discussed availability heuristics. So if you remember, that was when we make a decision, and heuristics are quick decision making strategies where we just use quick judgments to make a decision. Availability heuristic, representative heuristic, is the one where we compare it. We looked at the image of the 3 different people and you tried to guess which career they were in. You compare things to your schemas, which are, as you can see here, characteristics of concepts which allow us to organize and interpret information. So when you're a child is when you're really starting to develop these schemas and your concepts. And you see down here, sorry, it popped up there, but we have the prototype. So your prototype is your best representation of a concept. So for example, if I would say, imagine a dog in your head, your prototype is going to be that image that pops into your mind. And likely if you had a dog when you were a child, or you still have one, right, that's going to be your prototype because it's the one you have most experience and most familiar with. Schema are now the characteristics of that concepts, which are based off of your prototype. So characteristics would be what defines a dog. So when we'll talk about Alexandra here, and then your concept is just the broad category, right? So the category of a dog. So here we have little Alexandra learning about animals from her little picture book here. So this is how she develops her first schema for the concept of a dog. So little Alexandra, she's looking at the picture of a dog, and she's going to develop her schema or characteristics based off of that. So if she's looking here at the picture book, she's going to understand that a dog has 4 legs, brown, has a tail, and a head. And obviously it's all going to be visual characteristics because that is simply looking at a dog. She's not interacting with the dog at all. So that's going to start her concept for a dog. So now Piaget is going to propose you can do 2 things with your schemas. And this is how we learn through interacting with the world. So when you have a new experience, so when something new happens to you, you're going to compare that new experience with your pre-existing schemas and concepts. And you can do 2 things with that new experience. You can either assimilate it or you can accommodate it. So assimilation is when you add new information into an existing schema. So, for example, if we go back to Alexandra here, so maybe she sees the picture of a dog, and then the next day, her parents go out and buy her a dog. So now assimilation would be she has this new experience where she's actually interacting with a dog, and she now understands that the dog is furry and soft to the touch, and it barks. So that would be assimilation because you're adding that new information into an existing schema. She already had the schema of a dog, and now she's adding that new information in. Accommodation is when you change or modify that schema based on new information. So accommodation is you change or modify your schema. And you could also put in there, create a new schema. All right, so the way I remember changing and creation of a new schema is CC. Accommodation has two C's in it because you're changing or modifying a schema based on new information. So an example of that, all right, if we have here little Alexandra, she's got her doggy, right? So she calls the dog a doggy. Now her parents get a cat too. Bad decision. And now she's going to point to it and say doggy, right? Because it's got 4 legs, it's got a tail, it's brown, it's furry, has a couple of ears. So initially, you're going to be like, oh, it's a doggy because it fits her schema. And then the dad here says, well, no, that's a cat. A cat is a little smaller than a dog on most situations and meows instead of that. So accommodation would be now she can create that new schema for a cat and change her existing schema of a dog to determine the difference there. So if you do need kind of like if you want to go through that again, this video is very helpful and it kind of uses the example of like folders because your concepts are kind of these folders and your prototypes are the images you put into them. And then assimilation would be putting information into that folder. Accommodation would be changing or creating a new one. So now what you're going to do is you can use the Very Well website, or I added the YouTube video and then the online textbook, whichever one. Pick one you feel comfortable with and go with it. You're going to take notes on each of the 4 stages. So if we go all the way back here, you're going to take notes on each of the 4 stages. And remember, what you're looking for is what cognitive abilities are present at each stage and which ones are lacking. So take notes on the 4 stages, and then you're going to complete the Piaget and his toys assignment. Turn that in the classroom by 11:59 p.m. So I'll show you the assignment here. So you go identify toys that would be developmentally appropriate for a child in each of Piaget's stages of cognitive development. So stage 1 is sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, formal operational. So what you're going to do, you're going to go get a picture of the toy, paste that into the first box, and then you're going to explain why you think that toy would be appropriate based on the cognitive abilities that a kid at that stage would have. And your explanation should include concepts or at least one relevant concept related to that. So like, for example, object permanence is a concept in one of the 4 stages. So you would want to try and incorporate that word, conservation, abstract thinking, and so forth. So paste a picture of the toy in there, write up a quick little explanation why it would be appropriate, and then include one relevant concept in your explanation there. Go ahead and turn that in. And then for tonight, you got 50-2, 52-2. Remember, notes are going to be checked next week, Tuesday. And then unit 1 through 3 vocab packet, that'll be due next week, Friday. Have a great day. As always, let me know if you have any questions. See you all later.